Hi there guys, this is Darker Whispers. I'm sorry it's been so long since I've last recorded a video. College work has just piled up on top of me and I've managed to become up to date with it, so whilst my house was empty today I thought I'd have some time to record, which is what I'm going to do. So, to get me back into the swing of things, I thought I would do a reading of a new book I've got. This book's called Cage of Bones, and it's by Tanya Carver. Let me just read the synopsis on the back of it for you. It says, "Into the house, down the stairs, through a dripping dark of the cellar. Someone is there, someone who shouldn't be there. As a building awaits demolition, a horrifying discovery is made inside the basement. A cage made of human bones, with a terrified, feral child lurking within. Unbeknown to D.I. Phil Brennan and psychologist Marina Esposito. They have disturbed a killer who has been operating undetected for 30 years. A killer who wants that boy back. But the Cage of Bones is a box of secrets. Secrets linking Brennan to the madman in their midst. With the death toll rising and the city reeling in terror, Brennan and Marina race to expose the predator more soullessly evil than any they've ever faced. One who is hiding in plain sight. Okay, that was the blurb on the back of the book. I'm going to start reading the book now. For this video, I'll read the first couple of chapters, and then I'll make this into a little mini-series for you. So what I'll do is read up to chapter 5, and then I'll release this as a weekly video for you. Part 1. Summer Cold. It was a house of secrets, dark secrets, old secrets, bad secrets. Cam knew it soon as he saw it, felt it, sensed it, not just derelict, but desolate, collapsing under the weight of its own despair. A solid shadow, deeper than black. The old house was on an old patch of ground, just by the river, opposite the old Siege House pub and restaurant at the bottom of East Hill in Colchester, beside where an old mill had been converted into a set of fancy apartments. It was an area of old buildings, some dating back to Elizabethan times, mostly all sympathetically restored. The area had managed to retain some character, and the properties were starting to go for inflated prices. There was a demand for some of the same, or at least a cheap contemporary copy. But the first area had to be cleared, and that was where Cam came in. Back to the morning traffic, walking down a single track road, he had felt good. His first job after 3 months claiming job seekers allowance, a labourer with a building and demolition company, 17 years old, one of the few from his class to actually get a job. Not what he wanted. He loved reading and wished he could have gone to university and studied English. But it was realistic. Kids like him didn't go to university, especially not now. Still, he should be grateful to be working, to be busy, happy to be anywhere except at home watching Jeremy Kyle become cash in the attic. He had passed an old brick wall on his right, behind which a grand Georgian house had been renovated, turned into offices, all gleaming day, working in an office like that, what they do, having a secretary, even playing golf. Well, maybe not golf, but something like that. Perhaps they would love his work at the demolition company so much that he'd promoted, move on up the company until he was top man. Cam smiled, walked on. Then the trees overhead closed in, darkening the morning, chilling the air, and Cam's smile faded. The traffic noise diminished, absorbed by the trees. Old and thick trunked, they deadened the mechanical rushing sounds of vehicles, replaced them with the natural white noise of rustling leaves, cut off from the road. The noise of the leaves increased, shushing and whispering all around him. The sunlight barely glinted through the dark overhead canopy. Cam's smile disappeared completely. He shivered, felt suddenly alone. Beyond the cars was a wasteland, broad concrete post, heavy, mouldy from the old oil drums, chained together, bordering a weed-infested gravel patch. The line of defence, keeping people away from the building. Then the fence. He stopped before it, sturdy, heavy mesh panels anchored into the solid concrete bases. Surrounding bushes and weeds had grown through and around it, but a link towards it, trying to claim it for themselves. Dangerous, keep out, and do not trespass notices were attached to it by plastic ties, barely visible amongst the green. Warnings to the curious. Cam didn't look at them. He was just glad he wasn't doing this at night. The place was creepy enough in the daytime. Behind the fence was rubble and weeds, fighting for space, dominance, and beyond all that was the house itself. Cam took a good look at it. A solid black shadow, absorbing the daylight, holding it within, giving away nothing. Then he saw something rise from the side of the building, slap down with a leathery sound like a huge crow's wings. A horrible monster. He jumped, gasped. Cam turned, thinking, running away, stopped, tried to get hold of himself. This was ridiculous. It was morning, and it was just an old house. He looked at it again. He studied it, confronted it, hoped this scrutiny would take its power away. It was more like an old barn or storage house. It was old, very old, black wooden slats, cladded the exterior, most of them askew or collapsing with age and disrepair, leaving exposed lathwork and bare brick underneath. What he had taken for crow's wings was a huge sheet of black plastic attached to one side of the building, a cheap makeshift repair, now tattered and useless, left hanging beyond its useful life. There were huge gaps in the roof tiles, exposing the aged, water-damaged skeletons of beams and joists. At the far end was a one-story extension, blackened plasterwork, rotted wooden window frames, a crumbling brick wall exposed a flat, concrete area. Beyond that was the river Clone. Dirty brown plastic debris and greasy scum bobbing slowly along. So close to the road, the town, he could have been anywhere or nowhere. Just a house, Cam told himself. Just a house, nothing more. What you waiting for? A voice behind him, loud and angry sounding. Cam jumped, startled. He turned. Come on now, get a move on. We're on the clock here. The newcomer looked at his watch to emphasize the point. Shift it. Sorry. Cam's found his voice. Sorry, Gav. His boss had been following him down the path. Cam was so wrapped up in the house that he hadn't even noticed, galvanized into action by Gav's words, pleased to have some reinforcements. silvery green tendrils seemed to wrap themselves around his arms and legs, tugged at him. Cam felt panic, unreasonable, but insistent, rise within him. He gave one final heave, and eventually, sweating from the exertion, his knuckles red and sore from the metal and green from the foliage, he managed to make a quiet gap wide enough to squeeze through. "Yeah, that's right," said Gav. "Just make enough room for yourself, you skinny little bastards. Selfish twat." Cam thought of the answering, explaining in his sudden panic his irrational instant fear of the building before them, apologised and even had the breath in his mouth ready, but didn't use it. Gav was just joking in his own way, funny and charming, he thought himself. While other people found him loud and offensive. He wouldn't understand why Cam was so suddenly scared, but then Cam didn't understand it either. Just a simple job, Gav had said. 2-man crew, do it. Ricky decided how best to demolish the place and plan it. Do it. Clear the land and cram it in yet another development of boxy new houses and flats. Last thing Colchester needed. Cam thought more boxy new houses and flats, but he tried to have no opinion on it, because he needed the job, and because some of those boxy little houses weren't bad. He quite fancied living in one of them. Cam heard the vents rattle and clang behind him, felt it vibrate and shake. He also heard curses and expletives as Gav forced his steroid-pumped body through as loudly as possible. Cam, reluctant to even enter the house alone, waited for him. The other man joined him, stood beside him, looking at him. "What do you think?" Gav said, sweating from the exertion. "Like the House of Secrets," said Cam, instantly regretting it. Gav turned to him with a sneering smile on his lips. "The what?" Cam began to stammer. The House of Secrets. It's from a comic. A bit too hard for comics, aren't he? Cam blushed. Read it when I was a kid. It was a horror comic. These two brothers, Cain and Abel. Abel lived in the House of Secrets. Cain lived in the House of Mystery. With this graveyard between them. He paused. Gav hadn't said anything, so he continued. Cain was always killing Abel, but he was always back to life for the next issue. He expected Gav to say something, insult him in some way, take the piss, but he didn't. "Cain and Abel," said Gav. "That's the Bible. That first murderer and the first victim." Cam just looked at him, eyes wide in surprise. "What? Just 'cause I work in demolition doesn't mean I'm Vic." Gav looked away from Cam, beyond the fence, across the path. "Hey, look," he said, pointing. He laughed. "There's another. That must be your House of Mystery." Cam looked. Gav was right. Gav was right. There was another building further down the road, in even worse repair than the one they were standing in front of. It looked like a row of old terrace houses, boarded up even, falling apart, the foliage reclaiming it, eerie and isolated. Even the graffiti that covered it looked half-hearted, and in between, thought Cam, the graveyard. They stood in silence, and Cam eventually found his voice. "Creepy place," he said. "In it. Like something's happened here. Like an old Indian burial ground or something." Gav laughed. "You're too sensitive, you and weird," he sniffed. "Now come on," he said. "We better get cracking, 'cause it'll be bloody murder if you don't get a move on. We ain't got all day. Let's get inside." Gav stepped in front of Cam, crossed towards the boarded up doorway. Cam followed reluctantly. As he did so, he saw something on Gav's face that he hadn't seen before. Something that Malvinoff and bravado didn't cover. Fear. place, the house looked and felt even worse. The back wall was covered with tarpaulin panels. Over the years, the edges had peeled away from the wood and brickwork, and now resembled a line of hooded cloaks hanging on the row of pegs, just waiting to be worn to some sacrificial black mass. Cam shivered again. In amongst the cloaks were the remains of a doorway, frame rotted, eaten away from the ground up, paint flaked off and blown away. The door it held looked flimsy enough, missing paint showing the wood that looked like shredded wheat. "Go on, get it open." Gav's voice behind him. Cam reached out, turned the handle, pushed. Nothing. Pushed again, slightly harder this time. Still wouldn't budge. And again, once more this time, nothing. He stopped, turned to Gav, hoping that would be the end of it. That they could leave now, return to the sun, the warmth. Gav had other ideas. Useless twat, give it here. He twisted the handle, pushed hard, nothing. Anger never far from the surface of Gav's steroid adult physique, psyche, was rising within him, reddened his face, making him tense his arms. He stepped back, shoulder charged the door. A splintering sound, but it held firm. The sound was encouragement enough. Gav did it again and again. The door resisted, but eventually, with a loud crack and shriek of breaking timber, gave. Gav stood there, bent double, hands on knees, panted. "Go on then, kid. In you go." Cam looked between Gav and the darkness. Reluctantly, he entered. It took a few seconds for his eyes to adjust to the gloom after the bright morning sunshine outside. Once they had, it was pretty much as if had razor blades of dusty light cut through the gaps in the wood and brickwork off the walls, illuminating a desolate, dank space. The boards beneath Cam's feet cracked as he put pressure on them. He was wary about entering further, in case the floor gave way beneath him. A shadow loomed behind them. "Come on, get moving." Cam stepped further into the house. "Jesus Christ, Gav again, that smell." Cam had noticed he had been holding his breath. He let out the air out of his lungs, breathed in, and immediately gagged. The stench was awful, almost physical in its putrid power. "God," again, "it smells like someone's died in here." "Don't say that." Gav looked at him, about to make a joke, but Cam could tell he was becoming just as scared. Gav said nothing. "Let's look around." Cam was surprised at the strength in his voice, the bravery of the statement. But it had nothing to do with bravery. He just wanted to get this over as quickly as possible. The sooner this house was demolished, the better. Cam was still wary of the floorboards. Moved further into the room. The smell was overpowering. Cam hated to admit it, but Gav had been right. It smelled like someone had died in there. There was a set of stairs off to the left of the room, leading upwards. They looked, if anything, even riskier than the floorboards. Directly ahead was a doorway through to another room. It had no door. Cam was aware of the quick, darting movements in the shadows at his feet. As he moved slowly towards it, rats, he hoped. The remains of a kitchen were decaying in the next room. Cabinets empty, doors missing, or hanging by the half hinges. Lino underfoot broken and missing. "Anything there?" said Gav. "From the main room." "Kitchen," said Cam. Where it was once. At the far end of the room was another doorway. Cam moved towards it. There was a door from this one, closed, and it looked newer, sturdier than the rest of the inside. He reached down, the handle looked newer too. Heart skipping a beat, he turned it. A sudden light came from behind him. He jumped, a scream, shut his eyes. "It's a torch, you soft bastard," said Gav. Cam forced his heart rate to slow down. Gav swung the torch around the main room. A small black shadow scuttled away. They were rats, but something else had been there, among the debris of the falling apart building. The bricks, old concrete, cement, pieces of wood, and broken furniture were more recent leavings, pizza cartons, fresh food wrappings, newspapers. Gav shone his torch down on them. Look at that, he said. The date, a couple of weeks ago. Recent. The bad feeling Cam had been harboring increased. Let's get out of here, Gav. Come on. This isn't right. Gav frowned angrily, fighting the fear inside of himself. Not wanting to show bollocks, just some old tramp or something been dossing down it. Come on, he pointed to the door. What's in there? Toilet. Open it. Cam, sweating now, turned the handle. It wasn't a toilet. It was another flight of stairs, and this time leading down. The darkness sucked her. Where light was there, like a black hole. Gav. Cam stood back to let Gav see. Gav drew level. The two of them in the cramped kitchen filled it. Made the place seem claustrophobic. Gav shone the torch in the dark stairwell. The two of them looked at it. Go on then, Gav said, licking his lips, dry from the steroids caught for Cam or fear. Cam opened his mouth, wanted to complain, but knew it would be no use. The steps. Sorry, lost my place. Cam opened his mouth, wanted to complain, but knew it would be no use. Putting his hand out to steady himself against the wall, he began to make his way downwards. The wall was clammy, cold. He felt damp, flaky plaster, paint beneath his palm. The steps creaked as he placed his feet on them, felt soft at times. He reached the bottom, felt hard-packed earth beneath his feet, boots, a low ceiling above his head. The smell was worse down there. Corruption allied to pervasive dampness that made his skin itch and tingle unpleasantly. He crouched, looked around, saw shadow on shadow behind him. Gav started to move down the stairs, swinging the beam with his torch. As he did so, Cam thought flashes of illumination made out something in this fire. Just tell him. What's that? He pointed. Gav stopped descending, stayed where he was on the stairs. What's what? Over there. It's something glimpsed in the beam. Swinging light. Quickly, then gone. A construction of some sort. Crisscross. And behind it, within it, some kind of movement. Come on, Gav, let's get out of here. Just a minute. Cam surprised himself with the strength in his voice. His heart was hammering, blood pounding, rained his body. But fear, or no fear, he wanted to know what he had seen. What do you mean, just a minute? Come on, we're going. Wait, Cam's voice stronger now. Point a torch over there, in the corner. Why? Panic creeping into Gav's voice now. Because there's something over there. Gav grumbling reluctantly. So it did. Reluctantly did so. The beam illuminated the cage, built into one whole wall of the cellar. The bastard, the colour of stained teeth, tied together with what looked like strips of old leather. Jesus, Gav tried to back away, found he couldn't move. A cage. What's the cage doing down there? Cam didn't answer. He didn't know the answer. Fascinated, he started to move towards it. Where you going? Just, I saw something. Cam kept walking. Slowly, keep the torch pointed at the cage. Let me see. Something moved in the corner, shifted, a shadow with substance and bulk. There's something in there. Gav no longer hiding the fear in his voice. Cam stopped walking, stood rooted to the spot, staring, glanced around back. Gav. Keep the torch there. Cam reached the cage, extended a hand, touched it. The smell was worse in this corner. Animal waste. Plus corruption. The bars themselves stank. Cam leaned in close, smelled them like old bones in a butcher's shop. He froze. Old bones. That was exactly what they were. Come on, I'm going. The beam wavered as Gav turned, indicated the way up back upstairs. Give me a minute, Cam shouted back. I just want to. He didn't get to say what he wanted to do. With a clanking, rattling chains, the thing in the cage sprang to the bars, roaring. It grabbed Cam by the arm and neck. Cam screamed, tried to pull away. Couldn't. The grip was too strong. He tried to shout,